Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. I trust you had a great weekend. We certainly had an exciting one, but let me start with a photograph by David Yarrow. If it is at all possible, I prefer to work against the light. Images like Ghost demonstrate why. And it's an image of a lion. If you've never seen the movie, I think it's called The Ghost in the Darkness. It's an extraordinary movie, very thrilling. And he sort of captures, that danger that a lion represents. It was a pleasure hosting Patrick Girogi, the central bank governor. He sent me a tweet at the end, thanks to everyone, and especially Ali Khan, for a very memorable homecoming might speak. I really enjoyed the interaction, and didn't we all? Aisha caught that mood of a homecoming with her tweet. This for me is somewhat like my homecoming. That's what he said when he started. I wrote a piece over the weekend. It was indeed a pleasure hosting the 21st Century Governor and now Central Banker of the Year. That's an award he received from the African Development Bank. Dr. Patrick Girogi at Mindspeak this weekend. It was a full house and we had to turn people away, I'm afraid. I was what's called a short-end trader and ran short-end trading desks. If you think of the maturity spectrum as a continuum, the short end is normally 0 to 2 years or up to 3. Then you have from 2 or 3 out, you have the middle, the belly of the curve, and then further out is the long end, that's from 10 and onwards. The short end of the curve is essentially hypersensitive to interest rate moves, and if you wish to develop some expertise in this area, you of course have to concentrate fully on the central banker, who is the individual with the pistol when it comes to interest rates. I've studied central bankers for eternity, from the folks at the Bundesbank, through Trichet, through Greenspan, weighed their words and even went as far as to study facial expressions. My first point, and take it from me, is that Dr. Girogi ranks right up there. He was a viral tour de force, clocking close to 40 million impressions ahead of and during the forum. And that is a big number, pure and simple. The governor spoke for 90 minutes and covered just about everything. He said many things, but this article I spoke about, what he said was the exchange rate is stable, currencies at a 9-month high. This is my commentary, and that is after a 100 basis point rate cut. The shilling is Teflon, while currencies are crashing all over Africa. And its stability is entirely correlated to the governor's bona fides. Current account deficit for 2016, we expect it to be 5.5% of GDP. This has been a perennial challenge for Kenya, but the trend has improved dramatically, in part because the price of oil, even after a near 80+% snapback since January, remains benign, and oil is the single biggest expense item for Kenya Inc. The most important asset for any bank and the industry is trust, he said. The future in the banking sector is about transparency, governance, and effective business models. Going by the first quarter earnings release seen so far, the banks have gotten with the Girogi program. He said, our first duty is to depositors. These are real people, not just numbers. He asked how many people who collapsed banks are in jail. None. So we need to provide strong evidence to ensure they are jailed. The governor said definitively that the perpetrators of Dubai bank fraud will be made accountable. Regarding Imperial, bankers have never before had so few robbed so much from so many. He termed the fraud as a crime of opportunity with the use of IT systems. He called the Chase Bank Islamic banking excuse a gimmick. The governor said he was likely to take an office in the law courts this year as he prosecutes these cases. He said the most important thing in most AGMs has always been on power banks and umbrellas that has to change. There was a heavyweight boxer called Evander the Real Deal Holyfield. I posit Dr. Patrick Jarogi is the real deal Jarogi. On Bitcoin, it's the blockchain technology that's the issue, not the Bitcoin. He rebutted that quite strongly, actually. There were a number of people who were keen to engage him on that issue. Imperial Bank, never before had so few robbed so much from so many. Fraud was a crime of opportunity with the use of IT systems. How many people who collapsed banks are in jail? None, so we need to provide strong evidence to ensure they are jailed, he said. Perpetrators of Dubai bank fraud will be made accountable. The future in the banking sector is about transparency, governance, and effective business models. The exchange rate is stable. He thought a single EAC currency has many challenges, which I agree with him. We took this selfie with Joshua of KCB, myself, and the governor. Hannah got herself some monetary policy making tips whilst cutting the cake with the governor. I told Hannah, now you've met Lagarde and now the governor. And I said, I'm really getting you up close and personal. I was teasing her, of course. Youth need to dream, 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 he said. Our first duty is to the depositors. These are real people, not just numbers. Innovation is not about getting a new app. It was quite forthright on that point. Current account deficits for 2016, we expect 5.5% of GDP. And he made an interesting point about the re-export of aeroplanes by Kenya Airways. And he said he's optimistic about the economy, saying central bankers are typically cautious. He's looking for 6% GDP expansion this year. So really a tremendous mind speak. Thank you. We enjoyed it tremendously. It was a house full. Rufus is editing it, and we'll post that as soon as we can. Bond traders say don't count out June hike after Yellen remarks. Yellen's remark that the Fed will raise rates probably in the coming months drove benchmark 2-year note yields higher for a third consecutive week. The market next month for the following meeting in July, the chances exceed 50%. The shift in sentiment shows traders may be giving more credence to the Fed's projection of 2 more rate boosts this year after policymakers lifted their overnight benchmark from near zero in December. So I think she was pretty forthright and laid out a stall. I think the chances of a rate hike are very high indeed. The markets are reacting to that. Rhino charge. I once went on that Rhino charge with Tim Carstens, who's competing this time as well. And they've tweeted, nowhere I'd rather be on a Monday morning. It's just of a road in front of you, reminded me of Kerouac's On the Road. Then I like this photograph as well. In the low-angled light of afternoon, a woman and child shower on the beach in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. The iconic peaks of Dois Irmãos, the 2 brothers, loom in the background. I'm nearly finished and I've sort of slowed down because I've got about 10 pages to go. Roberto Bolano's 2066, and it's a tour de force, it really is. I sort of came through it by reading around it and then finally ordered the book and received it, and it's just amazing. Exemplary literary rebel, to drag fiction towards the unknown, he had to go there himself and then invent a method with which to represent it. Since the unknown place was reality, the results of his work are multi-dimensional, in a way that runs ahead of a critic's one-at-a-time powers of description. Highlight Bolano's conceptual play and you risk missing the sex and the viscera in his work. Stress his ambition and his many references and you conjure up threats of exclusive high modernist obscurity or literature as a sterile game. When the truth is, it's hard to think of a writer who is less of a snob, or in the double sense of exposing us to unsavory things and carrying seeds for the future, less sterile. We follow Bolano into digressions and with the weak intuition of a dream we sense him playing with the tools of genre. Halfway through a scene might vaguely take on the quality of a thriller, porn or fable. Every so often a character might start to discuss the problems of semblances and metaphors that reveal or conceal. This is the doubt-raising problem of representation itself. Yet there are scenes that feel like they could be there for no other reason than to memorialize a vivid incident Bolano might have witnessed, and which arrive in the novel like assertive, physically present ambassadors from life. Because there are many references to painting, and because the plot seems at times to move invisibly, as if unable to break out of stasis, the visual starts to take on great importance. Henry Miller said in the Paris Review, or it's a quote, "I read to be taken out of myself, to become ecstatic." Political reflections. At 63 and after 16 years in power, Putin has outlasted all other major international leaders. He'll soon be on his 4th US president. I'll put up a photograph of him speaking during a meeting with journalists in Moscow. Refer you to my article where I wrote Putin is a geopolitical grand master, and then find another photograph of him visiting Mount Athos. I went back to the text of President Obama's speech in Hiroshima, Japan, because it was such an extraordinary speech. His speeches are just outstanding. I'll just take a few clips out of it. 71 years ago on a bright, cloudless morning, death fell from the sky, and the world was changed. A flash of light and a wall of fire destroyed a city and demonstrated that mankind possessed the means to destroy itself. Their souls speak to us. They ask us to look inward, to take stock of who we are and what we might become. Artifacts tell us that violent conflict appeared with the very first man. Our early ancestors have learned to make blades from flint and spears from wood, use these tools not just for hunting, but against their own kind. Yet in the image of a mushroom cloud that rose into these skies, we are most starkly reminded of humanity's core contradiction. How the very spark that marks us as a species, our thoughts, our imagination, our language, our tool-making, our ability to set ourselves apart from nature and bend into our will, those very things also give us the capacity for unmatched distraction. This is powerful. Every great religion promises a pathway to love and peace and righteousness, and yet no religion has been spared from believers who have claimed their faith as a license to kill. That is why we come to this place. We stand here in the middle of the city and force ourselves to imagine the moment the bomb fell. We force ourselves to feel the dread of children confused by what they see. We listen to a silent cry. We remember all the innocents killed across the arc of that terrible war, the wars that came before, wars that would follow. But this too is what makes our species unique. We're not bound by genetic code to repeat the mistakes of the past. We can learn. We can choose. We can tell our children a different story. One that describes a common humanity, one that makes war less likely and cruelty less easily accepted. The world was forever changed here, but today the children of the city will go through their day in peace. What a precious thing that is. It is worth protecting and then extending to every child. That is a future we can choose, a future in which Hiroshima and Nagasaki are known not as the dawn of atomic warfare, but as the start of our moral awakening. Put up a photograph of an atomic cloud billowing above Hiroshima, following the explosion of the first atomic bomb to be used in warfare in Hiroshima in August 6, 1945. This photo now was taken about 6 miles from the scene of the Nagasaki explosion. I also put up a photograph of an emotional embrace between POTUS and Hiroshima survivor Shigeaki Mori. Then from an article in Counter Punch, it never happened, nothing ever happened, Even while it was happening, it wasn't happening. It didn't matter. It was of no interest. It didn't matter. This is Harold Pinter. Pinter expressed a mock admiration for what he called a quite clinical manipulation of power worldwide, while masquerading as a force for universal good. It's a brilliant, even witty, highly successful act of hypnosis. On Obama's watch, a second Cold War is underway. The Russian president is a pantomime villain. The Chinese not yet back to their sinister pigtailed caricature, when all Chinese were banned from the United States. Media warriors are working on it. In its mammoth war game in 2015, Operation Talisman Sabre, the US practiced choking the Straits of Malacca, through which passed most of China's oil and trade. This was not news. And then just to go back, there are somebody's Guardian's asking who wrote Obama's Hiroshima speech and saying it's Ben Rhodes. And Ben Rhodes, of course, was featured in that article, which got a lot of pushback, but actually was extremely accurate, I think. Iraq forces apparently entering the ISIS bastion of Fallujah from 3 directions, but I don't think it's going to be as easy as that. Bitcoin has recovered to its highest level since 2014 as China has become the center of the Bitcoin world. Look at the chart, it's surging. Dollar bulls bets jumped most in 6 months on Fed signals. This is after Janet Yellen spoke at Harvard. Euro dollar, last when I checked, was at 110.20. Dollar index 95.89. Japanese yen, big move. Last trading at 111.25, Swissy 0.9948, the pound 146.16, the Aussie 0.1764, India rupee 67.335, South Korean won 1190.74, the Real 361.25, Egyptian pound 889.01, and the Rand 15.7816, but there's plenty of noise around the Rand. So we've got to keep an eye on that. Dollar index, I'll put up a 1-year chart. I think we're going higher still. I think the market had priced out a rate increase this year, essentially having to price 2 back in. Euro dollar, I'll put up a 1-year chart, and this is really an interest rate game. I expect the euro now to head below 110. Dollar yen, now we've had a huge move in that. Have a look at this 3-month chart. And the market has really capitulated on this. This is interesting. Let's keep an eye on that. Gold, that's been suffering heavy selling. It was above 1300 not too long ago. We're now just above 1200 at 1202. Venezuela's gold reserves have plunged to the lowest ever as Maduro repays debt with gold. This is a report from Zero Hedge and probably informs us of what's been where the sell side pressure has come lately. I'll put up a chart of oil prices. They're down slightly, but not too much. Have a look at this average OPEC IEA data show another big oil stock build this year, more in 2017. I remain bearish on oil. Saudi oil output stable at high levels while Iran's production has surged. This is via UBS. SAMA said on Sunday net foreign assets declined 1.1% to $572 billion. That's the lowest in 4 years. The kingdom ran a budget deficit last year, nearly $100 billion. Takes me back to August 2015 when I said the end is nigh for crude oil and crude oil producers from Caracas to Luanda, from Riyadh to Abuja. I said oil-based economies are going to contract. Sorry, let me get back. Sorry about that. Oil-based economies are going to contract. Currencies which have already collapsed are going to be routed, and Greek-style austerity will be the order of the day. The meltdown is coming. Quoted Kapuscinski, if the crowd disperses, goes home, does not reassemble, we say the revolution is over. I said the revolution is only just beginning. Venezuela drifts into new territory, hunger, blackouts, government shutdown, New York Times report, courts closed most days. Bureau to start a business, same thing. Public Defender's Office, that's been converted into a food bank for government employees. Step by step, Venezuela has been shutting down. President looks increasingly encircled. The economic situation of this country has collapsed. There are people who go hungry now. Let me put up a photograph of Nicolas Maduro with his army chiefs. Let's move on to Africa. Court to rule on torture trial of Hissène Habré, Africa's Pinochet. One of the people who testified against him. For my 4 years of detention, I did not exist. I was like a tiny coin buried in a hole. Uganda on Sunday announced that it is breaking its military cooperation with North Korea during the visit of the South Korean president. I'll put up a photograph of her receiving a banquet of flowers from Megan Makanga, State House in Tebe. Van Ruyen and his family living in a 5-star luxury hotel. Hundreds of thousands of rands have been spent while Des Van Ruyen's official home is readied. I wrote about this when I wrote about the acrimonious exit of Nene hitting Africa's economy, and quoted Pierre Dutoit, a professor at the University of Stellenbosch. It's a disaster. The decisions he is taking are those of a man who doesn't understand that his own interests are tied to that of South Africa within a global political economy. He doesn't understand the world we are living in. And I said then, and I still apply it now, the markets are not interested in his explanations. They are seeing a South African president who has gone rogue. The first and second round effects are going to shudder South Africa Inc. And the scariest part for South Africans is this: the president just doesn't get it. Put up a photograph of him. South African all shares up 6.73% year to date. Dollar rand, last time I looked, 15.78. I think we're probably going to top 16 actually. Egyptian EGX30 up 7.18% so far. Nigerian president's government has resolved to keep the naira steady. As in the past, devaluation has done dreadful harm to the Nigerian economy. I supported the monetary authority's decision to ensure alignment between monetary policy and fiscal policy. We shall keep a close look on how the recent measures affect the naira and the economy. But we cannot get away from the fact that a strong currency is predicated on a strong economy. So I think it's still not clear whether he's going to capitulate on this matter, but he has to. Nigeria all shares up 0.91% this year, going up and at a 6-month high. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index is down 11.1% this year and at a 37-month low. Mozambique's donors demand full disclosure on nation's debts. Political repercussions are likely. Victor Lopez, the senior economist for Africa at Standard Chartered, we see a rising risk of increased social discontent against the ruling Frelimo party, especially as inflation rises as a consequence of a weaker currency. EABL, suppliers' row could push beer prices up, locked in a row with a section of its distributors over commissions, in a dispute that could see beer prices rise by nearly 20 shillings a bottle. The suppliers under the beverage distributors of Kenya are pushing the beer maker to increase their commissions from the current 4% to between 8 and 12% of the recommended retail price. This sets the stage for another rise in beer prices following an average increase of 20 shillings in December, with the introduction of new taxes on a number of goods, including water, cigarettes, and cars. It's a little bit. Kenyan consumers are incredibly price sensitive, so moving up by 20 shillings is a big deal. This is Charles Ireland, the group CEO. EABL has been a top performer at the stock market this year. It's up 10.622% and at a 6-month high. First half results were very strong indeed. I'll put up a photograph I took a little while back when we were enjoying a party, a Johnny Walker party at the Fairmont. Chris Karubi and Charles were on the table. Barclays Kenya reports that first quarter EPS expanded 2.564%. Total NPL and advances up 45.129%, loan loss provision up 27.097%. A man stands in a building earmarked for demolition in the Mathare neighborhood of Nairobi. Kenya shilling at 100.7, which is more than a 6-month high, 8-month high. Nairobi all share down 0.11% year to date in negative territory, and the NSE 20 down 4.29% so far this year. I wish you all a tremendous week and thank you for stopping by.